Okay, we're back again here in the Glass Bead game. Next book I wanted to go through was Bertrand Russell's Our Knowledge of the External World. And this is one of the first books that I read along with Parmenides and some others prior to me writing Metaphysics of Being. And I just wanted to read some parts out of this. And it's really interesting. He talked a lot about continuity and discreteness and infinity. And he made the comment, the more that the problem is mediated, the more real it becomes. And it's interesting because when you get into like what is the foundation of being, you come up with all these paradoxes. You end up going back to like Parmenides, who believed that there was one immutable, unchanging reality underneath this illusionary reality, the real world in which we live, which is a great paradox. And then also Zeno's paradoxes prove that the world that we live in is discrete. There is no true continuity in the world that we live in space and time. So we're chopping up the world into all these discrete, many little parts, which is contrary to what Parmenides thought. So I thought I would just read a little bit out of this book so you get a feel for some of that. Reality, she says, is uncreated, indestructible, unchanging, indivisible. It is immovable in the bonds of mighty chains, without beginning and without end, since coming into being and passing away have been driven afar, and true belief has cast them away. The great conception of reality behind the passing illusions of sense, a reality one, indivisible, and unchanging, was thus introduced into Western philosophy by Parmenides, not, it would seem, for mystical or religious reasons, but on the basis of a logical argument as to the impossibility of not being. Basically, Parmenides stated that since we are, we have being, that there cannot be any non-being, and that being must be eternal, infinite, indivisible, and that's contrary to the world that we sense, that we live in, where we were nothing before we were born, we live these 80 years, and then we become a nothing again. Parmenides stated that that must be an illusion, because nothing cannot create a something, and a something can never be dissipated into a nothing. This fundamental idea, it is difficult to disentangle the truth and the error in this view. The contention that time is unreal and the world of sense is illusory must, I think, be regarded as based upon fallacious reasoning. Time is an unimportant and superficial characteristic of reality. Past and future must be acknowledged to be real as the present, and a certain emancipation from slavery to time is essential to philosophical thought. A truer image of the world, I think, is obtained by picturing things as entering into the stream of time from an eternal world outside, than from a view which regards time as the devouring tyrant of all that is. Both in thought and in feeling, to realize the unimportance of time is the gate of wisdom, but unimportance is not unreality, and therefore what we shall have to say about Zeno's arguments in support of Parmenides must be mainly critical. Zeno's four arguments against motion were intended to exhibit the contradictions that result from supposing that there is such a thing as change, and thus to support the Parmenidean doctrine that reality is unchanging. Unfortunately, we only know his arguments through Aristotle, who stated them in order to refute them. Plato wrote Parmenides, but also Aristotle wrote his physics and talked a lot about Zeno and the paradoxes of motion. Some maintain that they were aimed at the Pythagoreans, while others have held that they were intended to refute the atomists. On the contrary, they constitute a refutation of infinite divisibility. In the interest of Hegel, maintains that the first two arguments refute infinite divisibility, and the next two refute indivisibles. Zeno is anxious to prove the motion is really impossible, and he desires to prove this because he follows Parmenides in denying plurality. Not only can you apply this to motion and time and space, but you can also apply this to, like, is there an overall truth to the universe? We may conclude, therefore, that Zeno's polemic is directed against the view that space and time consist of points and instants, and that is against the view that a finite stretch of space of time consists of a finite number of points and instants. His arguments are not sophisms, but perfectly valid. If things are many, there must be as many as there are, and neither more or less. Now, if there are as many as they are, they will be finite in number. If things are many, there will be infinite in number, for there will always be other things between them, and others again between these, and so things are infinite in number. This argument attempts to prove that if there are many things, the number of them must be both finite and infinite, which is impossible. Hence, we are to conclude that there is only one thing. And a lot of philosophers have tried to get down to this foundation of all of being, and Aristotle went one way. He was a realist and relied completely on the senses. Parmenides believed in going with his reason, and that there must be this one overall unchanging reality at the bottom of all this. So this has been a great division throughout the history of metaphysics, and the debate continues today, obviously. So that was just a quick introduction to Our Knowledge of the External World by Bertrand Russell.